You thought that making more money would solve everything. Then your salary went up, and nothing changed. Actually, let's get more specific than that. The direct deposit hit. It was bigger than the last one. Maybe it was a raise, maybe a new job, maybe overtime finally adding up. And for about 48 hours, there was this quiet feeling of relief. Like the pressure in your chest loosened just a little bit. And then, rent was due. Then the car payment. Then groceries cost what groceries cost right now in this country, which is a lot. And then a doctor's visit showed up on your credit card statement that you forgot was coming. And slowly, without any dramatic moment, without any single thing you could point to, that feeling of relief just dissolved. And you were back to the same low-grade financial anxiety you've been carrying around for years. Same stress, same tightness, just a slightly bigger number on a pay stub. If that hit a little too close to home, you're not crazy. You're not bad with money. And you're definitely not alone. My name is Ely, and I spend way too much time thinking about how people in the US experience money psychologically. If you're someone who earns a normal income, maybe even more than you used to, but still doesn't feel financially secure, this channel was made for you. Hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, because what we're going to talk about today isn't something most finance channels want to touch. It's uncomfortable. It challenges the thing we've all been quietly promised, that earning more money fixes the problem. And I want to show you exactly why that promise keeps breaking, and what's actually going on beneath the surface. Let's start with a number. According to data from the Federal Reserve's 2023 survey of consumer finances, the median household income in the United States sits somewhere around $74,000 a year. Now on paper, that sounds like enough. That's over $6,000 a month before taxes. That should feel okay, right? But then you subtract federal and state taxes, Social Security, Medicare. You're probably looking at somewhere between $4,800 and $5,200 take-home, depending on where you live. Then rent or a mortgage. In most mid-size American cities, a one-bedroom apartment is running $1,400 to $1,900 a month. Car payment, insurance, gas, another $700 to $900 easy. Groceries for one person, about $400 to $500 a month if you're being reasonable. Health insurance premiums, even through an employer, averaging around $150 to $300 a month just for the individual. And we haven't touched utilities, internet, phone, student loans, or the occasional medical bill that shows up out of nowhere and just sits on your kitchen counter staring at you. Run those numbers. Really run them. And suddenly $74,000 a year doesn't feel like the comfortable middle-class income it's supposed to represent. It feels tight. It feels like you're constantly one unexpected expense away from a problem. Here's the thing. This isn't just a math problem. If it were only math, the solution would be simple. Earn more, spend less. Done. But that's not what happens in real life. People earn more, and the anxiety doesn't go away. They spend less for a while, and then they don't. The math gets better, and the feeling stays the same. That's not a budgeting failure. That's psychology. And until you understand the psychological layer underneath the financial one, you can fix every number in your spreadsheet and still feel exactly as stressed as you do right now. There's a concept in psychology called the hedonic treadmill. The basic idea is that human beings have a remarkable ability to adapt to new circumstances, both good and bad, and return to a relatively stable emotional baseline. When something good happens, we feel a burst of positive emotion. Then we adapt. Then we need something bigger to feel that same burst again. It's the same reason the new apartment feels amazing for 2 months, and then just feels like where you live. It's the same reason the raise feels like relief until it becomes the new normal. The treadmill keeps moving, and we keep walking, and we never actually get anywhere emotionally, even when we're making real financial progress. Economists call the financial version of this lifestyle inflation. Psychologists might call it reference point shifting. But in practical terms, it looks like this. You were making $55,000, struggling a bit, dreaming about $70,000. You get to $70,000. Within 8 to 12 months, your expenses have quietly expanded to meet your new income. A slightly better apartment. A newer car because the old one needed work anyway. Eating out a little more because you work hard and you deserve it. None of these things feel like reckless decisions. They all feel completely justified. And individually, each one is. But together, they consume the margin you thought the raise was going to give you. The Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks consumer spending patterns, and what the data consistently shows is that as income rises, spending rises proportionally, and in many categories, faster than income. People don't save the race. They live the race. And this isn't a character flaw. It's an entirely predictable human response to having more capacity. The problem is that we don't account for it. We tell ourselves the story that more income equals more security, and then we're blindsided when the security doesn't show up. Now you might be thinking, okay, but isn't the solution just to not do that? To not inflate your lifestyle? To save the difference? And yes, technically, that's the right financial answer. But here's what most people don't realize. Lifestyle decisions are rarely made in a vacuum. They're made in a social context, a comparison context. And that comparison context in the United States is particularly brutal. Think about the role that social comparison plays in everyday financial decisions. You don't decide what a reasonable apartment looks like based on your income. You decide based on what the apartments your colleagues and friends and Instagram feed present as normal. You don't decide how much a car payment should be based on a spreadsheet. You decide based on what cars are sitting in the parking lots of places you frequent. According to the American Psychological Association Stress in America surveys, money is consistently the #1 source of stress for American adults, year after year. And a significant part of that stress isn't about absolute poverty. It's about relative position. It's about feeling behind. Feeling like everyone else has figured something out that you haven't. This is where it gets interesting. There's research from psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman showing that human beings feel losses roughly twice as intensely as they feel equivalent gains. This is called loss aversion. And in a financial context, it means that falling behind financially feels about twice as bad as getting ahead feels good. So when you look around and perceive that your peers are doing better than you, bigger house, nicer vacations, newer car, even if that perception is partially or entirely wrong, you feel a level of distress that isn't proportionate to your actual financial situation. You're not just reacting to your bank account. You're reacting to a story you're telling yourself about where you should be by now. That phrase, where you should be by now, is doing so much psychological damage in this country that it deserves its own conversation. There's a version of the American dream that is still deeply baked into how people in their 20s and 30s and 40s measure themselves financially. Own a home, have savings, maybe have kids, and still afford vacations. Drive something decent, by a certain age. And when reality doesn't match that timeline, when rent keeps going up and home ownership feels like a fantasy and the savings account barely exists, there's a layer of shame on top of the financial stress. Not just stress, shame. And shame is one of the most paralyzing emotions a person can experience because it makes you want to hide from the problem rather than face it. Let me give you a concrete example of how this plays out. Imagine someone, let's call her Maria. Maria is 32, living in a mid-sized city, making $68,000 a year at a job she's pretty good at. By any reasonable metric, she's doing okay. But Maria's rent went up $200 this year. Her health insurance premium increased. She's still carrying $28,000 in student loan debt. She got a 3% raise last year, which felt good for about a week. She doesn't own a home. Her savings account has about $2,400 in it, which she knows isn't enough, but doesn't know exactly how far from enough it actually is. She's not spending recklessly. She's not buying luxury goods. But she's also not gaining ground. Month to month, she feels like she's running in place. And when she compares herself to friends who bought houses, even knowing intellectually that they might have gotten help from family, or that they're probably not doing as well as they look, there's still this persistent feeling that she's failing at something, that she missed a step somewhere. Maria is not a cautionary tale. Maria is the median American experience right now. And what Maria needs isn't a lecture about cutting her coffee budget. What she needs is a clearer understanding of the forces working against her, psychological and structural, so she can stop blaming herself for a situation that is far more complex than personal discipline. Here's one of those forces that doesn't get talked about enough: threshold effects in financial security. There's research suggesting that below certain income thresholds, financial stress is primarily material. You genuinely don't have enough to cover basic needs, and that produces legitimate, constant anxiety. But above certain thresholds, the stress becomes more psychological in nature. It's about uncertainty, about the lack of a buffer, about not knowing what happens if something goes wrong. And here's the cruel part. Many Americans are living in this in-between zone. They're not in poverty. Their needs are technically being met. But there's no cushion, no buffer, no margin. And the human nervous system is not wired to feel safe without margin. A paycheck-to-paycheck existence, even at $75,000 a year, activates the same stress response as genuine scarcity. Because the nervous system doesn't calculate your annual salary. It calculates what happens if the car breaks down tomorrow. Think about that like a fuel gauge on a car. The car can technically drive fine at a quarter tank, at an eighth of a tank, even on fumes for a little while. But the moment that low fuel light comes on, something changes in how you're driving. You're watching every mile. You're aware of every traffic stop. You're making different decisions based on the anxiety of almost being out. That's what a thin financial margin does to a person psychologically, even when they're technically managing. The low fuel light is always on, and it's exhausting. Now look, I'm not going to tell you that the entire problem is in your head and that you just need to think differently about money. That would be dismissive of real economic pressures that are genuinely difficult right now. Rent is high. Healthcare costs are absurd. Wages in many fields have not kept pace with inflation. These are real structural issues that affect real people. But here's the thing. There's a distinction between the structural pressures that are real and the psychological patterns that make them harder to manage. You can't immediately fix the housing market. You can't personally negotiate your way out of healthcare costs. But you can start to understand and interrupt the psychological patterns, the lifestyle inflation, the comparison spiral, the shame response, the chronic uncertainty, that are amplifying the stress beyond what the math alone would produce. And that starts with one move that sounds small, but is actually pretty significant: separating the feeling of financial security from the fact of financial security. These two things are not the same. The feeling is emotional. It's shaped by comparison, by expectation, by past experiences with money, by your sense of identity and what you think you should have by now. The fact is a number. What's coming in? What's going out? What's staying? The feeling will fluctuate based on things that have nothing to do with your actual financial position. The fact is something you can actually work with. Most people make financial decisions based primarily on the feeling, and that's how you end up making a purchase that temporarily relieves the anxiety of feeling behind, only to create a new constraint that makes the actual numbers worse. The temporary relief of the feeling at the expense of the fact. And the cycle continues. So what does this look like practically? It starts with what I'd call a clarity exercise, not a budget in the traditional sense, because most people hate budgets and abandon them. Instead, just an honest accounting of what's actually happening. Not to judge it, not to immediately fix it, just to see it clearly. Because one of the psychological functions of financial anxiety is that it keeps everything slightly blurry. You know things feel bad, but the exact dimensions of why they feel bad stay just out of focus. That blurriness actually preserves the anxiety, because your brain can't stop worrying about threats it can't fully assess. Write down your actual take-home income. Write down your fixed monthly obligations, rent, car, insurance, loan minimums. Write down what's left. That's your variable margin. And now look at that number, not with shame, not with panic, but with clarity. Because until you see that number clearly, you can't make intelligent decisions about it. You're just reacting. And financial decisions made from anxiety rarely move you forward. The second thing is to create a distinction between your money identity and your money behavior. Who you are is not the same as what you currently do with money. One of the reasons people resist looking clearly at their finances is because they've fused their self-worth with their financial situation. If the numbers are bad, that means something about them as a person. But it doesn't. It means something about their behavior, their circumstances, and the economic environment they're operating in, all of which are changeable. Separating identity from behavior creates room to actually change the behavior, because it removes the shame cost that makes people avoid looking at the problem in the first place. The third thing, and this might be the most counterintuitive, is to stop optimizing for the feeling and start optimizing for the margin. The feeling of financial security is something you want. The margin, the actual buffer between what comes in and what goes out, is what produces the feeling over time. Every decision that protects or expands your margin, even by a small amount, is a decision that moves you toward actually feeling better. Not because you bought something that made you feel better for a moment, because you built something real underneath the feeling. That might look like not taking the slightly nicer apartment this year, even though you could technically afford the extra $150 a month. Because that $150 directed somewhere else starts to build a buffer that your nervous system will actually register. It might look like pausing before a discretionary purchase and asking honestly, is this going to make the margin thinner? Not as a way to deprive yourself, but as a way to stay conscious of the trade-offs you're actually making. The reason most people feel financially stuck isn't that they're failing at money. It's that they're playing a psychological game they don't fully know they're in. The hedonic treadmill is running. The comparison culture is pulling. The identity shame is paralyzing. And nobody sat them down and explained any of this. They were told to earn more and spend less. They were told that a budget would fix it. And then they did both those things and still felt stressed, so they concluded that something must be wrong with them personally. Nothing is wrong with them, and nothing is wrong with you. The system is complex. The psychological pressures are real, and the path through is not faster hustle or stricter discipline. It's a clearer understanding of what's actually happening, underneath the numbers, underneath the spending, in the layer of psychology where most of the real financial decisions are actually being made. That's what this channel is about. Not the latest investment strategy, not how to get rich by 35. Just an honest look at why money feels the way it feels in this country, and what understanding that actually changes. The raise didn't fix everything. It wasn't supposed to. The fix was never going to come from more money alone. It was always going to come from understanding what you're actually dealing with. And now you're starting to.